Matthew 18:20. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of them. It's often spoken by well-meaning pastors, worship leaders, and small group leaders who want to exhort or build interaction with their audiences or offer encouragement on gathering together as a group. I mean, raise your hand if you've ever heard a worship leader use Matthew 18:20 as an intro to a song or try to get people to join in, or a pastor to encourage people to come back next week or participate in small group. I can guarantee at about 50% of churches across America this Sunday, you'll hear this verse out of context somewhere, somehow. But there's a major problem here. It shows a complete misunderstanding of God's love, God's presence, and it spreads error about our personal relationship with God. It implies separation instead of our union with the divine. And look, my wife was a worship pastor for 5 years. I spent time as a worship leader too, and I've planted a few houses of praise and worship on multiple continents. I used that verse like that back in the day too, and I know a ton of pastors still using it this way. But just because everyone uses it that way doesn't make it right. In fact, using it in its incorrect context is all kinds of wrong and reveals serious foundational cracks about our understanding of our relationship with Jesus. When putting that verse into its proper context, we see that Matthew 18 is about dealing with sin within your worship community and the testimony of two or more believers needed to address it. It's not about gathering. It's not about interaction. It's not about encouragement to come to church on Saturday or Sunday, whichever way you swing. Matthew 18:15 through 20 outlines Jesus' instructions to disciples on handling sin-related conflicts among believers. Step 1 is for the person who is wrong to confront the person who wronged them privately with the goal of restoring the relationship. Hence the I am there with them comment that wraps up the verse grouping. This process applies to Christians resolving any disagreement or argument. First, address it privately, then bring it to others, and only as a last resort, address it publicly. The key is repentance and change is supposed to be evident, and relationships are supposed to be restored. The objective is always renewal, reconciliation, and restoration. But the way that leaders use this verse out of context to suggest a gathering model, it actually spreads error about our understanding about our personal relationship with God. You don't need two or three to experience God in the midst, because God is everywhere and is close to you at all times. What changes in our mature relationship with God is our ability to embrace this reality and to actually step into that reality and receive that even in the midst of calamity and sorrow, prosperity and happiness, the highs, the lows. God is with you. God is always with you. You don't need to have two people together for God to be there. God is always with us. And as believers, inside of us, dwelling with us in the secret place of the heart, God's power, the very frequency of heaven is within every believer. And we are inside of Christ. He's promised to never leave you nor forsake you, Hebrews 13, nor be separate from you, Romans 8. His presence is everywhere and will be with you always, Matthew 28. And according to Genesis, Isaiah, the Psalms, Ezekiel, Job, John, and the book of Acts, his very breath in our lungs is what gives us life. What is lacking is our awareness and knowledge and acceptance and embracing of God's presence within us and around us. For as the waters fill the sea, the earth will be filled with an awareness of the glory of the Lord. Habakkuk 2:14, which means that God's glory already fills the earth. What is lacking is our awareness of it. God's just waiting for us to step into God's reality that there is nowhere you can go to be separate from God. I mean, check out Psalm 139. Even in the depths of Sheol, aka the grave, God is there. God's not distant. God's not far away. And we don't have to invite God in, and we don't have to gather more than 2 or 3 for God to be there. He's already there. We don't have to invite him into our meetings. He's already there. We don't need to have 2, 20, 200, or 2,000 gathered. God's presence is already everywhere. God's already present in us and all around us. What's missing is our awareness of God being there, our respect of God being there, even when things are going wonky. Because heaven is waiting for our response as children of God in every situation. We are emissaries of heaven's authority, and for far too long, we've disempowered ourselves of that authority. We just have to wake up and become aware that there is nothing between us and God because of Jesus, and live that out in our love for Him and for one another. God bless.